Welcome to the Oregon Business Matters podcast, brought to you by Oregon Business and Industry, your statewide chamber of commerce. At Oregon Business Matters, we focus on insights, issues, and initiatives that impact Oregonians' shared prosperity and the state's economic health. I'm Angela Wilhelms, the president and CEO of OBI, and your host here at Oregon Business Matters. And today I have the privilege of being in the Sport Oregon offices, welcoming Jim Etzel to the show. Jim is CEO of Sport Oregon, a nonprofit that helps drive economic growth and activity, something I'm going to say we desperately need right now, through sports and recreation. In March, Sport Oregon released a first-of-its-kind economic analysis of Oregon's sports economy that was conducted by the well-respected consulting firm Echo Northwest, and it produced some impressive numbers. So I'm going to save the details for Jim to discuss. I'm very glad that he was able and willing to join me today, because I think you're going to find the work that Sport Oregon does and the information from this study impressive and exciting. So Jim Etzel, thank you for joining me today.
Angela, appreciate this opportunity.
All right. Okay, first of all, your office is so cool. I mean, this isn't my first time here, but for people who don't know, your office is just right across the street from Providence Park, the home of the Timbers and the Thorns, and it's just, you've got a great vibe. It's like a museum in here.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. As a nonprofit, we don't have a big budget for office space, and so 6 years ago we came into the space, and we had looked all over town for something that worked financially, but also worked, from an environment standpoint. And we're in an old restaurant, and it was quite a large restaurant. This development had been here for, at that time, 15 years, and there had been 3 failed restaurants in the space. Ouch. Over, I think, lights on total of like 39 months. So when approached the landlord, they said, "You're not going to open another restaurant, are you?" I said, "Office." And she goes, "Okay, let's talk." And so it's pretty funky, but it's us, and it's cool, and it gives us, some unique spaces to do our work, and then also to bring community in. Being across from the stadium has added a visibility factor. The first couple of years was really cool to always be walking out of games and walking towards the office, and we got these cool signs that have been donated to us, exterior signage that light up at night. People go, "What's Sport Oregon?" Or, "Oh, that's where Sport Oregon is." And, just kind of, and then I just kind of listen to people talk, what's Sport Oregon? And they're guessing. So it's been great for us. We love hosting community groups in here. We love hosting, our various meetings, potential rights holders that want to make Portland or Oregon home for their events. It's just a real inviting space and a lot of fun.
Well, and you have memorabilia in the bathrooms even.
Yeah.
It's like for those who haven't been at Hayward Field, there's Olympic medals on the floors.
Yeah.
It's just cool. If anyone finds themselves able to get here for something, please do. But I jumped the gun and went straight to the space. But let's back up and just give folks an overview. What is Sport Oregon? Let's just start there.
Yeah, Sport Oregon is 2 side-by-side nonprofits. Started with a 501c6 business association that's mission is to drive economic quality of life and social impacts in Oregon communities through sport. So we really look at ourselves as an economic development agency in the lane of sport, the sports economy, which is a massive industry in the U.S. In 2024, Sports ETA, which is a Sports Event and Tourism Association, did a study with Oxford Institute, and the size of the participatory sports tourism industry, and we can talk about these differences later, but is $140 billion a year annual industry in the U.S.
Billion with a
billion. $27 billion in tax revenue, 750,000 direct or indirect jobs tied to it. Massive industry, fastest growing segment in the tourism space in the last 15 to 20 years. Next to that is Spectator Sports Tourism. And Spectator Sports Tourism, just think destination events. That industry is the study that came out last year, captured that at right at $100 billion a year in the U.S. So our job here is to win our fair share of that opportunity pie, and so it's kind of a relentless focus, and I would say we're winning. We weren't even close. I didn't think, 7, 8 years ago, we've made significant progress on a number of fronts, and I think we're winning much more of our share, but there's still a lot more to win. I think what we've won, given here we are in this place that has sports in its DNA,
Yeah.
the home of Nike and Adidas and Columbia Sportswear and a myriad of other companies, a huge sports product, apparel, footwear economy. And so, there's 55,000 jobs connected to that just in Portland, Eugene, and Bend. I think 40,000 plus of them are here in Portland. So you'd think like this is a place to play. And God gave us some great places to play in natural areas, mountains, rivers, oceans, all that stuff. And it's amazing. But our built environment for play, especially for community play and participatory sports, we're in the bottom 10 in the states. It's pretty sad. And
Yeah,
so
we'll come back to
those
that
are the
too.
assets that we would need to win our fair share.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the business, we have our 501c3 foundation, which is really our community piece, where we try to leverage the house or big tent that we built with 150 corporations that support us, get them in a room, get them behind something, and raise money. And our objectives really are breaking down barriers to physical activity, especially for underserved youth communities around the state. And inside of that, we have two specific initiatives that really hone our focus. One is She Flies, which is all around the inequities for young girls and young women in sports, getting more girls in the game, keeping them in the game, which is good results in better life outcomes, lifetime health and wellness, and just a really significant area of need and opportunity. And then the other one is Play Oregon, which is all kids.
Yeah, it's great work. I mean, full disclosure, listeners, I'm a fan. I'm also a member of Sport Oregon's executive committee, but that's not why we're doing this. We saw a report a couple weeks ago now that you guys released that dovetails off of some of those national statistics and really looked at the impact here in Oregon. And so I want to come back to some of what you guys do, but I want to make sure that we're rooted in some of those numbers before we do the rest of that. So can you just give us an overview, high level for now, and then we'll kind of unpack bits and pieces of it, but of that recently released report, so that we can really kind of start to then get into the why and what of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Over the last couple of years, as we share the kind of the industry numbers nationally, we're constantly asked, whether it's by business leaders, community members, policymakers, what is it in Oregon? And it's really interesting in that we had no idea, no handle on it. And, we're a small nonprofit, limited resources, but we just felt like if we're going to achieve our ultimate desired outcomes for the state, then we need to get our arms around this so we would have real data that's trusted data that we can share in the community to kind of get to the outcomes that we want. So we sat down with Echo Northwest 16 months ago. Our board committed to a significant investment in this report. And at first we wanted to measure participatory sports tourism. So think youth tournaments, adult tournaments, these things are a regional, national level that drive significant heads and beds. We feel like in Oregon, we export our families every weekend. I kind of laugh with Curtis Robinhold at the Port of Portland. If you walked into Portland Airport on Thursday or Friday evening every weekend, all you see is line after line of young adults or young kids in backpacks and matching sweats marching towards departure gates. And then if you went down a little later in the evening to the arrivals, there's no one coming in. And so every weekend we send families all over the country, especially on the West Coast, to play in these tournaments. And we host almost nothing because we don't have the facilities. And so we wanted to really focus on that. What we found when we went out to the DMO partners around the state is it was almost an overwhelming task. And so we pivoted to Spectator Sports Tourism, and we're going to lead with that, cut our teeth on it, establish the benchmarks that actually get people excited and want to do kind of that roll up the sleeves and do the work with us and get in the game on the participatory side. So what we really wanted to focus on was Spectator Sports Tourism, which really is our professional and semi-professional franchises throughout the state, our Division I institutions, athletic departments. We just didn't have the time and depth of resources to go into D2, D3, and NAIA. We're going to add those things here this coming year. Great. And then we identified 15 to 20 what we would call significant events around or that are spread across the state that happen on an annual basis. So think, or almost annual basis. So think Big Ten track and field championships or U.S. Track and field nationals or NCAA championships at Hayward Field. Think Seaside Beach Volleyball or Hood to Coast. Think a Pendleton Roundup, Rockstar Energy Open, the big skateboard event in downtown Portland every year. Those are the type of events that we identified throughout the state, and we worked with the local rights holders and operators of those and started to capture this data. And we knew it was big, but in the words of Dr. Mike Wilkerson at Eco Northwest, he just was astounded by the magnitude of it. And I think we just scratched the surface.
Yeah. So actually, I do want to touch on one thing before we get to the numbers, because one of the things I thought was so interesting, makes perfect sense when Mike talked about it, but the report characterizes sports events as a traded sector activity, mm-hmm. which, when you think about those events you just rattled off, that is true. They're bringing spending into local economies through lodging, food, beverage, retail, not to mention, ticket, facility use, et cetera. So, and from an OBI lens, what we think is interesting about this is, and you touched on it earlier, we're competing. Mm-hmm. We're competing for these events. And so I just want to put this out there as people are listening to the impact, and then I'll come back to the question about what we can do to strengthen and leverage our ability to compete and grow that traded sector activity, if we can use that term, without Absolutely. Being purists about it. I think it's a great way to think about this.
Yeah, that's the fun thing on this report is as we move through the different verticals within Spectator Sports Tourism was seeing kind of what that traded sector impact was. So thinking, specifically out-of-state visitors, out-of-state money coming into Oregon and spending, and not kind of the, what everybody tries to poo-poo is like, it's just locals, and if they weren't going to the game, they would go to the theater or they go to the zoo. So this traded sector, it's huge. And I'll use an example. We hosted Formula E, which was the big global part of Formula One, and their race, the only North American race, was in Portland for 2 years. They came in over 3,000 Europeans and Asians, so the airlift into Portland was off the charts. Those people are here for anywhere from 3 to 5 days. The expenditures, operational expenditures by the race itself inside the walls of PIR, they spent $18 million on infrastructure with local vendors, tents, etc., all this stuff, and then they tore the $18 million city down the day after the event. So those are significant impacts into local businesses. And even the resources they have to bring in that we don't have in state, at the end of the day, they're passing through Oregon, they're hiring local workers. If it's a vendor from Las Vegas that is the only one that can do this specific thing. And then you look at our universities, our franchises, they have significant full-time employees, business operations, they are operating facilities that are 365-day-a-year facilities. So it's not insignificant. But when we looked at professional, first of all, the overall Spectator economy in Oregon, there's 4 million attendees. In professional sports, there's 1.9 million attendees attending these events. 20% are non-local. Then we go to collegiate, 1.7 million attendees. 40% are non-local. And I think, just think about the Big Ten effect and how the Big Ten travels their fan bases versus the old Pac-12.
Yeah.
It's habit.
Well, and I'm not the math whiz, but just back of the envelope, really quick math, that I think that comes out to being something like 25% of the total of that nearly 4 million number is out of state.
Yes.
That's a huge influx. So I think that's interesting. The other thing I think, well, let me have you just rattle off a couple of the statistics just to root people in the context of the dollars.
Going to that third lane of just these big events, I mentioned some of them earlier. IndyCar would be another one. 400,000 attendees each year at these events. Again, we just targeted 18 to 20 of them. We have a lot more to capture, like Sisters Rodeo or things like that, Malala Buckaroo, St. Paul Rodeo. The rodeo economy itself is huge in the state. 50% of event attendees are non-resident. So it's just the escalator that goes up. There's 2,800 total jobs connected to it, 144 million in labor income connected to it, 409 million in total economic output. Non-local spending on lodging, restaurants, retail, transportation, entertainment alone is $304 million. We talk about heads and beds around this, where that visitor is, and just that is 223,000 hotel room nights, which, is 37 million plus in room revenue, 4.9 million in, transit lodging tax revenue. And then, and then we didn't even touch, I talked about total jobs around these events, but like when you get into the pro and collegiate operations, some pretty astounding numbers when they're aggregated together, 5,800 full-time jobs within that space, with $1.3 billion in annual economic output.
I want you to repeat that. So the annual economic output of this, 1.3 billion.
1.3 billion on just pro and collegiate. Collectively, it's 1.72 billion in economic output.
Yeah, that's pretty extraordinary. That's a significant share of the state's GDP, and that's actually a statistic, I think, if I remember correctly, that they looked at that when, and you mentioned earlier, we punch above our weight a little bit. My recollection is that the sports account for 23% more of Oregon's economic output than the national average.
We're actually ranked 10th, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. A lot of that goes back to, kind of that core of what we have here and what I like to say, that kind of sports DNA here, but we've never kind of leveraged it and been strategic about it. And that's where, to me, the big opportunity for our state, lies. But, the states in front of us on this list, 8 of the 9 in front of us have a mechanism to incentivize and draw this business in. We're one of 15 to 20 states that have no mechanisms to incentivize recruitment of these.
You've touched on one of my favorite words is incentivizing. So what does that look like? What is an example of an incentive that listeners might not know about that these other states have that we don't?
Well, as most people know, we won the 2030 Women's Final Four.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, which is going to be the biggest sporting event the city of Portland's ever hosted. And it is going to be probably $35 million of economic impact. We are out raising $6 million to host that event.
At Sport Oregon.
Yeah. We raised $3 million when we submitted our bid, and then we'll start a public phase here to raise the other $3 million. 75% of our competitors have a mechanism in their state for an event of that level of visitor, viewership, economic impact. They get that funding. So it's not on the nonprofit to go and raise that.
So it's like it's a bid fund.
It's a bid fund, essentially. And, it's what we would love to have is pretty reasonable number. I mean, even if we had $3 to $5 million a year, the number of things that we could win for the state of Oregon on top of what we're already winning is pretty astounding. And it's not just winning for Portland or Eugene, it's winning for communities all across the state. I mean, there's global windsurfing competitions that have happened down on the Pistol River, and Southern Oregon coast. But like that community doesn't have maybe the $10,000 or $12,000 that rights holder needs to make that event pencil in that part of the world. And so, like, if we can lean into that community, what that would do for that community in the Southern Oregon coast, or some of the USGA championship events that are going on at Bandon Dunes, they have significant outcomes and impacts in those communities. And there's just most of those local communities, I would say every local community except for Portland, has no mechanism. What we have is this visitor development fund, which is really targeted around convention center and room nights, contracted room nights. So, like, how can we lean into communities with just really small deals that could drive events could be 500 room nights, could be 1,500 or 3,000 incremental room nights, and then that trickle down into where are they eating, where are they going, where's their spend? I mean, and all these people are out of state, visitors.
I think, I'm gonna soapbox here for a second. I think what's so interesting about this is that these are very specific examples of things people across the state love. I mean, Salem is so proud to be one of the favorite Ironman spots. You talked about things on the coast and in Southern Oregon and in Bend and in Pendleton and across the state, and really relatively small investment needs. And you're perfectly illustrating, and I did not tee him up to do this, guys, but you are perfectly illustrating what we talk about a lot at OBI, which is these types of smart incentives are just that. They're investments, and there's a return on those investments. That's why you do them. They're often billed as giveaways to whatever national group is hosting the event or something like that. And, okay, but they're not giveaways, because they're actually selfishly is a return on investment, both in community development, but also in raw dollars. And I think we have to get over that mindset. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say on that is that it also just isn't about us being smart and saying there's an opportunity. If I could give a small amount of money like that and see that kind of return in my retirement portfolio, I'd be all in. And the state needs to adopt that kind of mentality. But apart from that, it isn't just about us.
Right.
We're competing with other states. And so we cannot take for granted that all of these wonderful national events are going to stay if we don't figure out how to compete.
Exactly. Like Salem is a great example you brought up. So I think it's 6 years ago, we had a really good relationship with Ironman, and they said, we want to bring an event to Oregon. Where can we place it? And it was an event that should be somewhere outside of Portland specifically. So we identified 3 or 4 communities, and 2 of them stepped in and bid for it and competed, and Salem got it. And so, but this took $40,000 to win annually. So, we worked with Willamette Valley Visitors Bureau and Travel Salem, Travel Oregon. We got some grant funding for it, but it was a lot of work, and we're sweating bullets to do it. But, that event has 2,500 participants, another 5,000. Of that 2,500, 80% come from another state. 80% in this case. $15 million of local economic impact, and it's one of the most loved routes and competition tracks in all of Ironman. And Salem, it fills up hotels from Corvallis all the way up to Wilsonville. It's their biggest capacity. They're at full capacity. The compression, there's no rooms available in the mid-Willamette Valley on that weekend each year. So, and then also the type of person that participates in this has a higher disposable income, so they tend to put shoulders on these trips. And so we're seeing the average stay It's over 5 days for this event from the participants. So they're going to the coast either before or after, probably after, or to Central Oregon, and they're putting the shoulders and spending some, leisure time here, and again, spending more money in the city, in the state. And so then, I'll talk about Eugene. These track and fields, we kind of take for granted that it's our birthright to host these events. Whether it's the Big Ten championships, the NCAA championships, the U.S. track and field championships, or Olympic trials. Well, there's 20 other places in the country that want to pull those away from Eugene, and we don't have a mechanism to support those. And those are like NCAA championships is $500,000. So the athletic department at U of O doesn't have that. They don't get to keep the revenue from that event. So they've gone out to their donor community and asked them to step up to the plate so they could host this event in Hayward Field. It's not a birthright. It is a competitive scenario out there. And what's the result? It's the biggest, compression night for the Eugene Springfield area, not night, week. It's the largest traveling championship in the NCAA. I think 3,000 athletes. The room night requirements are great. But what if another community like Austin, Texas, or Fayetteville, who have phenomenal facilities, win this event, have cheaper rates, also have the ability to pay that incentive, and we lose that? Now all of a sudden we lose 3,000 visitors to the state that spent 3 to 5 nights here competing. Yeah. It all adds up.
Yeah. The other numbers I find astounding. So apart from the dollar impact, and maybe this will help explain the dollar impact and why it's so large, just really quickly, you talked about a couple of them right there, but tell us a little more. So the Olympic track and field trials, which that obviously only happens every 4 years. Mm-hmm. The nationals happen sometime here in between there. 100,000 spectators, for that event. Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, the Pendleton Roundup, 80,000 spectators. Right. The Seaside Beach Volleyball Tournament,
second largest in the world.
I did not know that. So the Seaside Beach Volleyball Tournament is the second largest beach volleyball tournament in the world.
200 competition courts on the sand.
That it is a sight. If you've never been there, you gotta go. It's a spectacle. But 40,000 spectators. I mean, I think these numbers would probably surprise people, because this is just stuff we take for granted. Like you said, it's in our DNA. We do this. It's great. What do you think? What is one thing you think people don't know about sports tourism in Oregon, apart from the numbers we just rattled off?
Well, I think what people you don't realize what you have until you lose it. So so that's been our deal, is to educate and be a trusted source of information. We're not a propaganda machine. Even this report, I just talked about all these room nights for track and field in Eugene. Guess what? This report, no matter the event, is based on one room night.
That's right.
One room night. We were purposely ultra conservative. I mean, 2.3 room nights would be ultra conservative, but we have to have credibility. I hate to say this, but sports promoters, we're not a sports promoter, but sports promoters are great at exaggerating their impacts, trying to extract things. And so, sometimes the joke in the industry is, take what they say, divide it in half, and believe a quarter of that. Well, that's kind of the premise we've taken on how to build this report. The very, very, very conservative numbers are astounding. And as we get more knowledge, have better ability to track, add participatory sports in, this number is going to get significant. And so, and we're doing this, as I said, the one thing what people don't realize, we don't have the toolkit to win. And and it's not just winning events for people from other places to come play here or compete here. It's about what those facilities would do for the communities in our state. Places to play, safe places to play, modern places to play. Every community in the state, you look at their youth sports system, there's not enough courts, not enough fields for practice time. Families are driving long distances to practice at crazy hours of the evening and morning. And so we get these things, and this isn't about creating more stuff for the travel sports industry where, you have to be at a certain socioeconomic level. It's the ability then to engage these things for the underserved, socioeconomic communities and get every kid to have an equal opportunity, so we can work with local nonprofits to fill these fields during the week, not just on the weekend with out-of-towners.
Yeah, it just seems so mathematically and economically obvious what the return here is. And I get it. Not everyone's a sports nut like you or me.
Yeah.
And so I get it why it's not front and center. But whether we're talking about, food tourism or just the nature tourism, ecotourism, but the sports tourism thing, I think people do take a little for granted because if you're not a sports fan, it's not maybe in your wheelhouse. If it's not something you participate in every day, you don't think about it, but it is impactful. To your point, we can bring those dollars in and then invest those in our local communities for our very own youth and community development.
I look at things, pretty simplified, like what are your strengths? Play to your strengths. We do not leverage the fact that we are the epicenter of the global sports product economy, which, every one of my peers around the country, oh my God, what would we do to have Nike in our backyard or Adidas, have that kind of mindset, of, engagement and so forth. And then also just when we hosted our national convention 3 years ago here, they were blown away. I mean, people came from all over the country, had never been here before. And they just like, oh my God, like we have this bountiful playground that, like I said, God gave us, but it's like, we haven't built anything. And so, and when I'm talking building and not building stadiums and arenas, I'm talking about just
we're going to work on a couple of those too,
yeah,
but
we got a few of those in the tracks, and we on both sides of the equation. So it's to me is like we're showing results right now with one arm tied behind our back.
Yeah.
And sometimes two. But what if we just put some focus, emphasis, and it's like budget dust investment. What could the multiplier be? And it is not insignificant. And that's where everybody benefits. People want to separate sports and arts. They both have the same vibrancy and vitality equation. They have the same economic impact equation. They should be connected by a comma or the word "and" at the most. Yeah. Like they shouldn't be in separate paragraphs or separate pages of emphasis. No one should make a choice between sports or arts about facilities. They're one and the same. And we talk about I have that third world of the this vibrant food culinary scene, and we're and put those things together, and it actually strengthens our story across not just sports, but arts to win.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, a couple really rapid fire kind of questions. What are some events coming up this year that people should know about? I mean, I know there's too many for you to rattle all of them off, so apologies in advance if there's a listener we offend by not including your favorite, but what are a couple that you think people ought to know about?
Well, one that I think people should know about because they won't hear about it is USA Fencing Nationals. And probably not a lot of fencing fans out there, although we're a hotbed for fencing in this state, have produced a lot of Olympic medalists. But we're hosting that at the Oregon Convention Center. It will take every square inch of that facility in late June and July. It's an 11-day event. It'll drive, we have 11,000 contracted rooms. So it's like a couple citywide conventions. The spend of the attendees is going to be significant. And no one will know that event was even here unless you were a fencing fan and you're not going to see any promotion for it. And that event is at a key time of the year where we need to create compression in the marketplace with lodging, and will be a huge windfall for the city, and also gives us that opportunity. All those visitors are from out of state, maybe 100 of the participants out of the thousands that will be here are going to be from Oregon. Everybody else is out of state. So it gives us that chance to kind of change the narrative. That's the other thing about sports. We bring people here and they go, it's nothing like I've been reading about or on social media. This is no different than my city. We have our problems here, obviously, but like they go, what an amazing place. I'll come back. I was wrong.
This is our marketing campaign. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is very cool. I will be there. I'm just intrigued to see it. I think, when do you have the chance to do that? So I'm going to make it a point to be there as well. Anything else top of mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rockstar Energy Open's pretty cool,
Oh,
and it's a free event in Waterfront Park in August. This is the world's best skateboarders. We hosted this event for the first time 2 years ago. This was a major victory. This was a highly desired event to be hosted by, I think 8 of the top 10 markets in the country wanted to host it, and we beat out LA and San Diego, and it's been phenomenal. We had 50 skaters that came straight from the Olympics in Paris to here, including every single medalist, male and female. And it's just a cool family event. It's got music. It's got all these different things. I mean, those are 2 events in Portland that no one, kind of thinks about. And then I just think, I'm going to go back to, track and field. I think it's kind of a little bit taken for granted, but I think there's so many events and they're so back to back in Eugene. So it's a little bit overwhelming. But either picking the NCAA track and field championships and just seeing, it's just a cool event to watch. There's so much going on. And the all-time is Prefontaine Classic, best track meet in the world. I mean, and the field there, and every year that event produces world records, personal best. It's just got a vibe, and you get it all in 3 hours, and you're out of there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm at that event every year too. I love it. I'm going to mention one other track meet that people probably don't know about, but Oregon this year at Hayward Field will be hosting the under 20 World Championships. So talk about bringing people in.
Yeah, there you go. You pulled one that I should have mentioned.
Well, no, that wasn't a criticism. You just got me on the track and field, which some listeners know me and they know that's a passion of mine. Okay, what's your sport of choice?
Oh, you're going to put me there, huh?
You don't have to answer.
I'm the son of a coach. I grew up on the baseball field and basketball courts and the gym, and those 2 are really core. And, I know we're just an audio broadcast here. So, and if I'm sitting down, no one can tell how tall I am, but those that know, I'm 6'8".
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. I love soccer. And my grandfather took me to a Portland Timbers game in 1975. I was 12 years old, and it hooked me. And I got to actually see Pele play in the stadium twice, including his last game ever. I was 13 years old. And something about the game. And then, being a UP guy, my dad, the athletic director, just soccer was something there with Clive Charles. And I always loved consuming it even before that. And it's kind of odd. I've always appreciated game. I get a kick out of some of the old sports writers. Dwight James is one of them, a great guy, but he goes, "Oh, soccer's so boring," and 1-0 or not 0-0, and I'm going, well, you will write about a baseball game being a 1-0 masterpiece, and that took 2.5 hours. You could get a 1-0 result in soccer that was a masterpiece, and it took 115 minutes, including intermission. So it's all in the eyes of the beholder.
True.
But I love football. I love the pageantry of football, college football especially.
I better cut you off. You're going to rattle off.
I'm going to run out,
sports.
but I'm going to name them all. But no, really, I grew up just on the diamond and the basketball court, and so those are always core to me.
I hear you. And also visually, listeners don't know, Jim's sitting right in front of a Christine Sinclair jersey, so we can talk about University of Portland Pilot soccer.
There you go. Well, we got Lillard over here. And
we've got a lot of them in here.
But yeah. Bill Schonley
there you
over
go.
Here.
Okay, final question. Where can people go to learn more about Sport Oregon and the work that you do?
Go to sportoregon.org. It's probably the best way. And then follow us on Instagram at Sport Oregon. It just keeps you in touch. We're not going to drown your box on anything, but I think to find out about us as an organization, go to the website. I think you'll see the depth of support we have from annual investors. We have a massive board. You're in that room all the time. And we have a 99% renewal rate on annual investors. So they're the outcomes we're achieving, KPIs and ROIs, they're just, we're on a mission here. And then, the Instagram is just more fun. And we cover the state on that. So that's where I'd go.
Great. Well, Jim Etzel, CEO of Sport Oregon, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for the work you're doing to promote the economy. It's obviously something we at OBI care deeply about. So we're grateful for that partnership and want to wish you all the best in your current bids, current events that are coming up, and just appreciate you spending some time with me.
Appreciate the invitation to join you, Angela.
All right. Oregon Business Matters is a production of Oregon Business and Industry, your statewide chamber. Our episodes are available on all your favorite podcast platforms, so please like and follow, and we will see you next time. Well, technically, I guess you'll hear us next time. Have a great day.